My mom was the president. There would be a mandatory military service for all males 18 and above. I'm going to try to go to West Point then because got to go to ROTC. Might as well go to Premier Academy. They were doing reduction in force, and we went to a briefing, and I was sitting next to a major, and he looked at me, he says, "Hey, Lieutenant." And they came in one day and just handed guys pink slips, said, "Hey, thanks for your service. You're done."
Welcome back, Blue Grit podcast listeners, viewers, warriors. I am Tyler Owen, your host.
And Clinton McNear.
What's going on, man?
What's up? Oh, got in the truck this morning to crank it, and it was dead as a hammer, so I had to do NASCAR pit crew battery change. Oh. All listeners that drive a diesel truck, when you have a battery go dead in August, and O'Reilly's tells you if you're going to replace one and replace both, don't be hard-headed and cheap and only replace one.
So just to be clear, the professionals indicated to you a
guy
has no business under a hood, unlike your son. Shout out to Brock, and you didn't listen to him.
I did not listen to him, so I replaced a battery in August because my truck was dead, and this morning my truck was dead, so I replaced the second battery.
If I'm not mistaken, was it not?
It was a podcast.
Yeah. You've also have a package that I'm going to inherit to the Owen family.
Yes, Kima.
Yeah. I am. Clint has a beautiful chocolate lab that, man, with you traveling and stuff all the time, I've got two kids and they need to be occupied. So I'm actually getting her kind of like, I'm hopeful. I know she sits, she stays, but I'm going to train her to be a babysitter.
She'll do that.
I've got two kids, and so maybe that'll work out.
She will do that too. So she'll retrieve.
There you go.
Horse fetched.
Beer. She'll go get a beer if I need it.
Probably.
Well, if she does, we'll bring her up to the TMPA headquarters and try it out. So
I like it.
Yeah. Welcome our guest, man.
So we've got a SWAT legend on. I'm excited to have on Lieutenant Dan Colasanto. Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Dan Colasanto from Garland PD. Long-time Garland PD, long-time SWAT at Garland PD. In the current president or executive director? President of TTPOA, Texas Tactical Police Officers Association. Welcome on, brother.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You're in town because you guys have a competition going on in Round Rock this weekend.
That's correct. It starts Thursday, tomorrow, runs through Sunday. So people can come out and watch if they want. It's down in at the Wilco Range. And then I think part of it's going to be also at the Round Rock facility.
About how many teams y'all usually have competing that?
It varies. I think we're up to 30, maybe a little over 30 this year. Wow. So it's a pretty full field.
And it's full-time, part-time teams. It's
full-time, part-time. I think we have a medic team too from Wilco. I think so. We have a bunch out of state. One from Connecticut. Usually we get Florida, Louisiana. So they come from all over.
Out of country,
we've had out of country. Last year we had Kuwait. Team from Kuwait came.
Sweet.
But that was interesting.
Let's dive into that.
It was pretty cool.
Let's dive into that at the end when we talk about Garland SWAT back in the 90s was legendary, and the national SWAT competition. There's some pretty good stories
from the roundup
we would like to share.
Yeah.
We like to kick off every episode with, who the hell's Dan? Where were you born? Who's Dan?
So I was actually born in New York, Port Chester, New York. Grew up there. Played baseball, played hockey, was a hockey player. I remember in high school I told my counselor that I wanted to play in the NHL. He kind of frowned upon that a little bit. So instead of playing in the NHL, I decided to go to West Point. So worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
Still a huge baseball fan.
Yes.
Always been a huge baseball fan.
My son coaches. He teaches at Prestonwood Christian Academy. He's a head JV baseball coach there. So
nice.
He's very baseball smart.
That's awesome.
Graduated from high school in New York?
I did, Stepanak High School. It was all boys.
And what town is that in?
The high school is in White Plains.
Okay.
It was all boys Catholic, but back in the day when you got out of line, you got smacked. So it was pretty interesting. On one of my West Point interviews, they asked me if I would have trouble with the discipline. And I asked the guy, I go, well, do they hit you if you get out of line? And he's like, well, God, no, they don't do that. I go, well, look, sir. I said, I go to Archbishop Stepanak, and if you get out of line there, you get smacked. So I think I'm going to be all right. All they're going to do is yell at me.
That's awesome.
Do you have a lot of family in the military? What led you to West Point? How'd that play out?
So if my mom was the president there would be a mandatory military service for all males 18 and above. So
Not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea. I grew up. My parents were divorced early when I was young. She had the idea. I had a cousin who went ROTC and went to Vietnam, was in the Air Force. So she was very adamant that you are going to go into the military, whether it's ROTC or whatever. So I said, well, I'm going to try to go to West Point then, because if I got to go to ROTC, might as well go to the Premier Academy. So I applied and was accepted. Graduated in 1988.
Wow, that's a rare experience in our young listeners. There's a bunch of academies out there. It's a great opportunity. It's an incredible resume piece. Every branch has an academy. Coast Guard, Navy, Air Force has a beautiful academy in Colorado. And
beat Navy. I'd throw that out there.
But for our young listeners out there, and we have a bunch of police explorers that write in, and there's a great opportunity really to set your whole career up through an academy.
Oh, it was a character building experience. It helped me obviously in this job. As far as the stress goes, I mean, you're carrying a pretty heavy workload. You work time management. You work a lot of back then there was a lot of yelling and a lot of performing under pressure.
Is it like that in the entire 4 years that you're at?
No. So the first year is the worst. The way I explain it is everything that you do is wrong, and there's 4 people there to explain it to you in a not so nice way that you're doing it wrong. There's some yelling and some other things involved. And the first year, I mean, we were required to you memorize certain bits of knowledge that at the time or you think are like, why am I doing this? I mean, every day we had to memorize the breakfast, lunch, and dinner menus. We had to memorize, had an article in the New York Times, but you couldn't do one because if they came to Clint and said, hey, give me an article in the New York Times, and he did your article, well, you better have another one. So you basically had to, the whole front page, you had to kind of have an idea of what, talking about an article there. So your first year is the worst. It's absolute worst. I mean, during the academic year, it's not as bad as far as, I don't want to call it hazing, but the rough treatment, because it's academics, and academics took a priority. There was quiet time and things like that. But after the first year, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
That's
First year
awesome.
was horrible.
Yeah.
So graduated from West Point with a degree.
Engineering.
Good Lord, man. So you're not just pretty, you're smart too.
Yeah.
Wow. Engineering degree, what was your MOS?
So I went in as an armor officer. So I started off on tanks. I always wanted to be a cop. Looked at going to the MPs and got some advice my sophomore, junior year from a captain who was in, said, hey, go combat arms first, and then you could branch transfer if you decide.
That was sound advice. I was an MP, and it was not a good experience.
It was sound advice, and that's what I did. I went armor, 2nd Armor Division, Hell on Wheels.
Joe Tovar's going to dig this.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
2nd Armor Division. Big Patton fan, so it was kind of cool.
Hell yeah.
Went Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and then came back and did my branch transfer. Was in the MPs for a short period of time.
Nice. Did your hitch, got out. How did that evolve? Well, you ended your career as military police.
Yes.
Is that what, did you have family in law enforcement, or is that what kind of gave you a taste of maybe civilian law enforcement?
I didn't. I always wanted to be a policeman. I was always, even as a little kid, walking around, I was enamored by the police. They were just, I thought they were cool. You play cops and robbers. I was always wanted to be the cop, not the robber. So plus, if I ended up being the robber, my mom would beat my butt. So it was just something I always wanted to do that. And before I got out, they were doing reduction in force, and we went to a briefing, and I was sitting next to a major, and he looked at me, he says, hey, Lieutenant, not trying to tell you your business, but I had the same briefing back in the 70s after Vietnam, and the triangle was flipped. At that time, they didn't need the junior officer, or at this time, they didn't need the junior officers. He goes, and they came in one day and just handed guys pink slips, said, hey, thanks for your service, you're done.
Wow.
He goes, so if you're thinking of another career, you might want to do it. And I remember sitting in the 2nd Armor Division movie theater going, I always wanted to be a cop, and I'd hate to be, 70, 80 years old sitting on the front porch going, man, I wonder if I could have done that. So I'm like, I think this is the time to do it. So it's just something I always wanted to do. It's funny because even when I got to Garland, in my interview board, they're like, what are you doing here? You know, and I'm like, I just want to be a cop. I always wanted to be one. I mean, I have a lot of classmates that are cops, actually. Some are FBI. I have other classmates that are generals now and heads of companies. I mean, I actually was in my company, the CEO of 7-Eleven, Joe DePinto.
Wow.
He was in my cadet company.
Wow.
So it's kind of cool.
You get free gulps, big gulps.
So what base were you at when you ETS'd?
Fort Hood.
Okay, so you're already in Texas.
Yep, that was my first and only duty station. That's the one I picked. I always wanted to come to Texas.
Can't say Fort Hood.
Yeah, it's something else now.
Well, it's Fort Hood when I was there.
Cavazos?
Man, I can't pronounce it, but I almost
It's
got hemmed up
something
by
It's something else now, but it was Fort Hood when I was there.
Yeah.
I got a kid at Fort Gordon, Naval Intel, that's no longer Fort Gordon. Apparently they had to change their name too.
How old were you whenever you got out of the military?
Mm-hmm.
What age?
25, 26.
Okay. Go ahead, Clint. I cut you off.
So you get out, you've done your tour of duty, serving your country, you got a degree in engineering, West Point grad. How do you go from beautiful Killeen to beautiful Garland? From one metropolis to the other?
So one of the first places I applied to was the FBI, because that's just, I mean, you know, I thought that was a cool thing to do. And I took the test. They asked me when I went down there, they actually pulled me out of the test and asked me if I spoke Italian. And I said, well, not like you want me to. I said, I can understand it. I said, but I like, if I'm sitting around people, I can tell you, hey, this is what they're talking about, but not like you need me to. So they said, yeah, well, you know, your chances with your degrees, you know, probably not that great, because I wasn't a lawyer, I wasn't an accountant, I was just a general and degree. So I'm like, okay. So then I applied at Dallas because I figured I wanted to go to big city. So I went to Dallas. And because you took the test, you did everything like in 3 days. So I stayed with she's now my sister-in-law. And when I was taking the test, I went to back then we had phone books. Nobody probably knows what that is right now. And I went to the yellow pages under police departments. And so I started naming off departments that were nearby. And got to Garland. I go, hey, what about Garland? She goes, yeah, that's because she grew up in Mesquite. And so she's like, yeah, Garland. She goes, that's a nice city. She goes, I think you'd like it. It's not too small, not too big. It's probably medium size. So I called up and I said, hey, I want to apply to be a policeman. And they said, well, the test isn't going to be for a while, but we'll put your name down on this card. It was Athy Denny. And went up there, took the test, and got hired. So
What year was that?
1992.
So you were like class 36, 35?
35.
35? Okay.
At the time was the biggest class. They've had bigger ones since, but
I sensed he was going to say in the best.
it was the best. I mean, we still have a lot of guys
I just wanted to throw it
over.
out there.
How many did you have in your class?
with 35.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, it was huge. We had guys coming in, and I asked at the time, like, because if you look on the board, you know, anybody who's been to the academy can look on the board, look on the walls. They have the pictures of all the academies.
Yeah.
And you know, there was like 2 guys, 3 guys, 5 guys, 10 guys. And here's us with like 35. I'm like, well, what happened? And they said, well, over the years, they just, for whatever reason, just weren't hiring people. They weren't keeping up with kind of the departures and the retirements.
attrition.
And they're like, oh boy, we're in trouble now. So now we got to, you know, push big academies out. So I had over 400 people. I think 450 people took the test. When
So
I
class number 35
Yep.
had 35 people
Yep.
in it? I was 38, class 38 with 31 in it. How many did you graduate out of 35?
I don't know. Not all 35, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I figured that. Garland's Academy back in the day was
Salty.
salty. It
Yeah.
was it was sporty.
It was sporty.
You were better served in law enforcement, knowing the career you've built and all you've accomplished. You've served the community and your country better in the role you did, in my opinion, than if you'd have gone to the FBI.
I agree. Thank you. I think so. I don't think I would have fit in probably well over there.
You've done a lot, seen a lot, affected a lot of change that I think would have been missed. I think your abilities and the change you've helped affect across Texas law enforcement would have been missed out.
I appreciate that. Thank
Greatly
you.
missed out.
Actually, in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't get hired
Yeah.
there. I'm glad I went to Garland. It was looking back, and even when I went there, I think it was a perfect place for me.
Well, and I think let's touch on this real quick. I mean, you work at Garland PD, have for many, many, many years. But look at the impact that you've had across Texas. And that for the listener out there that's just now starting their career, you may go to Mesquite. You may go to Jefferson PD. You may go to Marshall PD. You may go to Houston. Don't be so focused on the fact that you can't have a positive impact across Texas. And I think that's really what drives home the point is that, again, you've been at Garland PD for many years, and look at the impact you've had across the state, if not the nation. So kudos to you for doing that. Of course, we're about to dive off into your tactical, career because Clint talks. It is astonishing of what you've accomplished and what you've been through. So kudos to you for doing that, man.
Well, thank you.
Well, and what's cool is when I retired from Garland and took this role, we traveled the state. And so literally people laugh, and like my family jokes that somebody in every agency. And I'm like, well, once you've traveled the state enough,
Yeah.
if somebody calls and says, hey, I need a contact at Amarillo, I can get you on the phone with somebody in Amarillo. And we feel like we get to be known or have good contacts around the state. But what's funny is you're still at Garland, and everywhere I go, I'm like, yeah, I'm retired Garland PD. Oh, dude, you know Lieutenant Dan? I'm like, shit, yeah, I know. No matter where I go, dude, you know Lieutenant Dan? I'm like, yeah, I know Lieutenant Dan.
It's funny because I don't realize it, but then these things pop up, and then I tell people, I go, look, if you want to get a hold of me, if you call the Garland Police Department, right now and said, I need to talk to Lieutenant Dan, it would go to my extent. Everybody in the building knows. It would all the the dispatcher, everybody knows exactly who that is, and they're like, are you serious? I'm like, yes, I'm totally serious, because most people can't pronounce my last name. So I go, Lieutenant Dan, they know who that is.
Or Dino.
Dino. Yep.
That's cool, man. That's really, really cool, because I'm not bullshitting whether it's a tiny agency or a big agency. Everybody's like, dude, Guy Garland Dino or Lieutenant Dan? Or that's a cool accomplishment to realize the change that you've affected.
And for it to be positive.
Yeah.
You don't want to be known as, Tyler Owen. Like, oh, God. But
Get out of the academy. Academy was sporty back in the day. Go to patrol. My first memory of you was in gangs. How long did you do in patrol?
I think it was about 2 to 3 years, because then they started the gang unit.
That's my first memory of you.
And I was one of the first guy in the full time. You had like part time guys at first, because they were still wrapping their heads around the fact that we had a gang problem. So they had these part time guys. You'd work a couple hours after your shift. I worked evening shift, so you'd work. You get off at 10. You work 10 to 2. Overtime. It was overtime stuff. Then they had a full time one. So then I was a gang unit. And then I went to narcotics for a while. Did uniform narcotics, was back to patrol, was the quartermaster, which was probably one of the best jobs I have had, because I learned so much about the purchasing system and how to get stuff, how to pay for stuff, all the different methods to do that.
That's something else I want to dive in, though, too, because I told him a funny story about you. I'm like, when we have Dino on, he's one of those guys that if you ever mention, man, we could use this, don't be shocked in a week when Dan shows up with it and you're like, where'd you get that from? And he's like,
I have a guy.
Just don't.
That's one of my favorites. I have a guy. If I don't have a guy, I have a guy who has a guy, and I can find it.
So before Bearcats and all that and military surplus MRAPs came along, we were still at the old station. I mean, this is, I guess, in the 90s. SWAT guys were like, dude, we need an armored car. We need an armored car. And somebody shows up in a bank armored car. And I can remember everybody being like, where the hell did you get that from, Dan? He's like, we're good, but we have an armored vehicle now. Then he got everybody to go in and, cut hatches for officer down rescue and put rails on it, and was getting stuff provided for us to be able to do it. And it wasn't the prettiest armored car around, but we damn sure had an armored car. It didn't cost, because budgets are always tight. And I can remember people being like, where the hell do you find that? Just, we have an armored car. Don't worry about that. Like, shit. That's how it was in the Marines.
That's all.
Sure could use a GP tent. The next day when one shows up, the captain's like, where the hell did that come from? Captain, you don't really want to know.
Don't ask.
That's awesome.
Early 90s movie Colors came out. Bloods and Crips were hopping. Early 90s, man, you guys, I can remember being a young officer thinking, dude, I want to be in the gang unit so freaking
It was
bad.
fun. There was a lot of stuff going on.
And y'all just roamed free reign.
Yep.
Jumped hot calls. If it sounded gang related, y'all showed up.
Yep. It was actually back then. There was actually like turf, not like it is now. They're all over. There's hybrid, and then I've been supervisor over the gang unit here recently. Hybrid gangs, and they're all mixing together. Whereas, I mean, when I was there, it was like if you went to Embry Park, that's where the East Park Crips were, and they was just like the movies. They all wore blue. They all hung out over there. If you went to the West Side, it was all Bloods. They all wore red. I mean, like decked out in red, bandanas hanging down, just like the movie. And they were on the West Side, and the East Side didn't go to the West Side. I mean, it was just like that. The Hispanic gangs were kind of in the middle. We had some Asian gangs that were pretty violent, pretty bad guys. I mean, they would, it was funny. We would joke because the other gangs would be like, yeah, we're going to fight. We're going to meet here and fight. And they'd maybe show up and maybe they'd fist fight, whatever. Yeah. The Asian gang guys would show up and they'd all have guns. They were kind of ahead of their time. They were doing cloning phones. They were doing credit card stuff, counterfeiting. I mean, they were into a lot more sophisticated crimes, I guess.
They preyed on their own a lot.
Yes, they did. It's funny. They had this. I remember we were at the El Pool Hall one night and doing some FIs, and there was this white kid there, and he was hanging out with the Asian kids, and he had this tattoo on his arm, and it was Chinese writing. And I asked him, I go, what is that? What's your tattoo mean? He goes, it means like love. I go, yeah. I go, are you sure? He goes, well, what do you mean? I go, well, do you speak or read Chinese? He's like, well, no. I said, well, how do you know? He goes, well, my friend told me. I go, well, how do you know your friend didn't give you the Chinese word for dumbass and you got dumbass on your And he kind of looks at me and goes, never really thought of that. I go, well, it's too late now. I mean, I guess you could turn it into something else. But, but they were a little more sophisticated. I mean, the other guys were doing typical stuff. I mean, they'd have some guns, drugs. Yeah. But the Asian guys were pretty violent guys.
She told me offline you've been at Garland 31 years.
Started 31 this couple days ago.
And been on SWAT 28.
Yep. Yeah.
How long you been a lieutenant?
2011, 11 years, 10, 11 years.
Stayed on SWAT as kind of SWAT commander, SWAT advisor as a lieutenant now? Or you've never been off, right? That I know of.
I went off for a short period of time. When you get promoted, you go off for a little bit. It's another funny story. So I was off the team, and we call it the timeout period. You're in timeout. So I was in timeout, and so there was, hey, if it's SWAT business, it's SWAT business, and if you're not in there, you don't get involved in it. So I'm like, they would come to me and they go, hey, we need to order blah, 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 whatever it is, and widgets. And I'm like, hey, man, sorry, I'm not on the – they go, well, they said to come to you. I go, well, I don't do that anymore. I can't do that. I can't – I'm not on the team. And okay, well, who should we go get? I go, I'll go ask some, whoever. And so after, I think, a few days and a few weeks of that, they're like, okay, he needs to come back because we can't.
You're back on.
You're back on. So –
and that's just during the promotional process?
Once you promote to supervisor, you're off the team, and then you come back as a SWAT if there's an opening. They'll put you back on.
That's cool.
As a supervisor.
Okay.
Talk about, Garland in the 90s was salty, and we did a lot of aggressive police work. In a lot of our guests, we talk about how police work's changed and it's evolved and necessarily so in some instances, but a lot of it's changed. But a side effect of law enforcement changing overall, SWAT's had to change. The tactics have changed. The optics have changed. And I know guys our age, it's hard to – I was talking to a guy our age a couple of months ago, and he's like, dude, they've gone to surrounding call out. I'm out on that. I'm not. And he acknowledged that there's probably some upsides to it, but he's like, I just don't want to change. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to change. And I see a lot of guys struggle to evolve as law enforcement changes. Have you guys in SWAT's experienced that. I mean, it's and we'll lead into the road DAs prosecuting SWAT for justified use of force. But tell me about how that's changed.
So I think a lot of it is technology driven. Younger guys now, everything they have. So when I started, right before I started, I should say, so they had rifles with literally had SL-20s with hose clamps clamping the light to the gun. I mean, I'm literally, that's what they had. That and short cut down shotguns. Obviously that's evolved now. That's, if you showed up with that, they'd be like, what the heck are you? But I mean, that's what they used because that's what they had.
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me of, the SAS when they do the Iranian embassy and they got the flashlights, kind of on top of the guns, and you talk to guys there. Yeah, that's what we had. That was state of the art. I mean, that was state of the art. Now, obviously, there's, LED lights, and I mean, I remember my first Surefire light was 60 lumens with 2 batteries, and that was like the cool thing. And you had one on your pistol, it was like a foot long, and everything's kind of changed in that respect. But even technology, there's drones, there's robots. There's Bearcat. I mean, we didn't have Bearcat. We had a bank armor car that we got from a guy. They were giving them away, so we just. I actually made friends with the guy. He was from New Jersey, and they had two. One was they had two. It was the Armored Transport was the name of the company. They had an office in Vegas, or they had an office in Dallas, and the stipulation was you could have it, but you had to go get it. So he. We had a little brother-in-law deal because he's from New Jersey and he liked me. I was from New York, so he got me one in Dallas, and we just went and picked it up, and basically, like Clint said, just showed up on the back. Like, here you go, here's your armored car. We just got to paint it and do whatever. Cool. But of course, now there's Bearcats, and we're fortunate enough for our city. Now we have two. We're 2 Bearcat city, but a lot of it now is technology. I mean, things in the past where we would send people in to go do things. Now they're sending robots, sending drones. I mean, it's safer, and I get it. It's kind of it's a little different from what we did, mm-hmm. But I kind of liken it to, episodes of Adam 12. I watch Adam 12, and they're getting out of the car. He's worried about putting his hat on and his nightstick, and there was no SWAT, so they had to take care of business the way they did. And some guys just get used to that, but now we have these other options that we didn't have before. So. Some of it's a little growing pains, getting used to it, and the big challenge is adapting the tactics to use these things safely. But at the end of the day, as I like to tell people who do surrounding call-outs and these other tactics and use robots and drones, I go, well, if they don't come out, if you send the robot in and there's the guy, and he says, come out, no, I'm not coming out. Okay, well, I'm going to send my drone in. Okay, send your drone in, and there he is. Hey, come out. No, I'm not coming out. Well, sooner or later, somebody is going to have to go in there and get that guy or girl. And even if you clear the house, somebody still has to go in there to make sure that it's clear, because it's not clear until the team leader says that it's clear. So, some of that's technology driven, and I'm glad we have it. I mean, we're fortunate we have those tools and we use the tools, but from our perspective, at least on our team, hey. The guys know, hey, sooner or later somebody's going to have to go in there. We're going to have to go in there. And I think there's been this kind of risk averse to going in, which, hey, if that's your thing, I get it. But soon, like I said, sooner or later somebody's going to have to go in there to make sure that it's clear, to make sure you have everybody. Because even if you surround and call out and people come out, you still got to make sure they all came out and not somebody's still not in there hiding. So,
well, and to Clint's point, for years. And it probably was like this when both of you started. I think we as a profession across the nation, you may go to Louisiana and run a warrant. Let's just say for whatever reason, Garland's got a homicide suspect and you've got CID guys that are going to go to Louisiana. Let's say that you guys are going to go over there. Their tactics in Louisiana and how they do things are still going to be different to this day. But for the most part, if you linked up with a Louisiana team or a Houston team, or a Dallas PD team, or Mesquite, the tactics are going to be the same for the most part. And I think we, as a profession, and tactics in general, have evolved to where we're all on the same music. We're all on the same sheet of music. And I think that's where, and we'll get into it here in a little bit about TTPOA, just how important it is that we all get there, because we've seen, the tragic events that have happened like in Allen. We've seen the tragic events that have happened in Dallas, the Dallas 5. And so I think it's good for us as a profession to all be uniform on how we respond, how your tactics are, and so forth.
I think in general, and the example I always use is the barricaded person, right?
Yep.
You have a barricaded person, and they're in there, and you're going to get them out. You're going to resolve the situation. Well, if you took 4 different teams, they may resolve it differently. They may use different techniques. They may use different technology. They may use different tactics. But they're all on the same page of hey, this is how we need to resolve it.
Yep.
Right? They're not going to differ on that. Now, how they do it may be different, but the goal is going to be the same. The goal will be peaceful resolution, hopefully, and that's what they're striving for, and that's what they're going to do. Again, how they get there, different. Doesn't mean that our way is the right way and your way is the wrong way. That just means this is how we do it. Now, some of that is based on the city you're in and your department. What is your good? And that's kind of like with TTPOA. We provide training. We don't tell departments how to use the training. We just give you the training. Example, explosive breaching. We provide explosive breaching instructors. There's probably 3 or 4 big names in the country, and we have all of them. They all teach classes for us. We don't tell you which one to go to. You go to which one you want. How you implement that is up to you. We don't tell you how to implement it, and we're not going to tell you how to implement it because it's not our business. What we're allowed to do in Garland may differ from what they're allowed to do in Plano, or what they're allowed to do in Frisco or Dallas. How they implement explosive breaching, when they're allowed to do it, and how they're allowed to do it. It's different, and that's okay. But they still have, the point is, they still have it. It's just, how do we implement it? And TTPOA, we don't get in the business of telling you how to implement it. We're just telling you, you want explosive breaching training? Here it is. Pick one, use it, adopt it, adapt it, get rid of it, whatever you want to do.
Yep.
And a great example of that just occurred to me. Traveling around the state, we end up on scenes or active SWAT calls, and I may arrive at one and they're like, yeah, we have a barricaded person, we're going to dump 3 ferret rounds in there, and if he doesn't come out, we're freaking going in. And you may go to another one where they've dumped so many ferret rounds into the house it looks like a Swiss cheese, and they're going to wait a long, but at the end of the day, they both know at some point they're going in there to get him out. But one may be, shoot a ferret round. Yep, he didn't come out. Let's go, boy. Stack and go. And another one may be 76 ferret rounds in 18 hours. But at the end of the day, you got to go get him.
Recently, I think Harris County had some deputies get shot. They had the guy barricaded, and they used a rook, and they dismantled the house.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's
remodeled.
But again, you go back
reimagined
10, 15 years ago, there was no rook. So guess what? You're going to shoot ferret rounds in there, and if he doesn't come out, guys are going to go in there and get him.
Yep.
But now we have the rook, so why would you? I mean, why would you not use it? If the boss says we can use it, hey, we're going to use the rook. We're going to send that machine up there, and we're going to remodel the house till the guy comes out. And guess what? He did.
Yeah.
We reimagined his house for him.
That's right.
Which was a rental. That was the whole. That was awesome.
There was some great memes out of that.
Oh
one.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the SWAT team, the technology, we've had Pearland's one of the leading agencies in the country with their drone system, and negotiations have evolved. And at Garland, our negotiators are part of the SWAT team, or a branch.
They are a branch, yes.
Under the SWAT team.
Yes.
Do you see the technology changing across the country like that in general? Or are most of them going to explosive breaching, or a lot of them going to surround and call out, to using drones to clear a house before they go in? Or is that still more spotty than the norm?
I think it depends. I always say, I hate to use situationally dependent, but it's situationally dependent. We have done surround and call outs before. We have not used surround and call out. We've used drones. I mean, some of the thing with the drones is if I send the drone in the house and the guy closes all the doors, kind of hard. We've used robots. We've used the bomb robot. It can open doors. I think it just depends on the situation. What I think is important is that you don't get tied to one thing, that you don't get tied to,
Great point.
This is what we do all the time, every time. because one of the things that I've learned is if all I ever do is surround and call out, but I have hostage rescue as one of my tasks, and then I have to use hostage rescue, and I have to go dynamic to go rescue somebody, but I don't ever practice it, it's harder to ramp it up than it is to ramp it down. So if I practice, I can practice dynamic stuff, and then if I need to ramp it down, I can ramp it down, but it's a lot harder to go the other way. But I think that's one of the things that we need to guard against is, hey, this is what we do all the time, every time, and we don't do anything else because, this isn't that kind of a business.
I think that's a great point. And second point, the only one dark day that I can remember at Garland regarding our SWAT team is there was I think sovereign citizen, I can't remember, he was out in Van Zandt County. We had a bunch of active warrants, and y'all were going to get him. And a captain at the time, who's no longer there, thank God, decided it was too dangerous. And I remember visiting with all my SWAT buddies, and they were thinking, being a patrolman's kind of dangerous. Being on SWAT's kind of dangerous. Kind of everything we do is dangerous.
That's why we do it, because it's fun.
Well, yeah, it's fun and dangerous. But that's the only really dark day that stands out to me. And I don't know if you recall the incident, but y'all were spun up. It was go, spun up, and it was decided.
I remember I was a new guy, so I didn't really have much say in that one. I do remember getting spun up, and I do remember, hey, we're going, and hey, this is cool, and then, it's kind of like getting ready for the Super Bowl, and then they tell you, hey, take your uniform off, you can't play,
But any other excuse, like we have surveillance, and he's probably not anything other than,
that's
it's kind of too dangerous. Well,
yeah.
Catching bad guys is dangerous.
Well, and that's,
we're in a dangerous business.
That's what you have SWAT for, right? To me, it's, yes, the patrolman's job is super dangerous. Walking up to a car is very dangerous, especially you don't know who's in there.
Walking up to a house.
Walking up to a house. There's plenty of danger. That's the job is dangerous, right. But that's what you have SWAT for, right? If this thing rises to the level to where it may exceed the capabilities of the regular patrol guy, because we have special weapons, hence the name, right? And tactics and other things that we can use to help. So why would you not use them? That's what they're there for. So why would you not use them?
Talking about dangers of walking up to a house, what year was your shot to your helmet?
That was 1998, July 16th, 1998.
You mind sharing with our listeners about that?
Yeah, so we were doing a drug raid in Balch Springs. We were going to a house in Balch Springs. The week before we had hit the house. The bad guy wasn't there, but we seized his rifle, his SKS, and 1,000 rounds of rifle ammunition, which I'm thankful that we did that week. The second week, we're going back. There's probably only 2 times in my career that I have had the feeling like, hey, something bad's going to happen. One was there, and one was May 3rd, which I got another funny story about that. So we're loading up. We're getting ready to go in the van, and the narc whose case it was gets off the phone. He goes, "Hey, I just got a call from the CI. The bad guy's got access to another gun." And I remember looking back. John Atkins was my cover guy. I was going to be number 1. He's number 2. I said, "Hey, stay close to me. I got a bad feeling about this one." So we roll up to the house. We have Mark's squad there. They're doing a deal right at the front door, and they look at us. Bad guy closes the door, and the other guy just kind of walks off the porch like nothing. And I remember telling him to get on a specific type of ground, and he is not listening to me. He is just walking. And I remember thinking to myself, why isn't he running? He should be running. I'd been running. Of course, these things are playing in your head, but it's going a lot faster than what you think it is. And he just keeps walking. So we throw him down. I remember thinking, man, I think we're getting set up. Something's wrong. And throw him down on the ground. About that time, he starts shooting out he had a converted garage. So he would shoot out. We broke the window as a distraction, and he starts shooting out the window, and then he leans to the other side and shoots out the front door. TJ Pilling was the slammer. He gets hit in the finger, grabs his hand, and he says, I'm hit. And he rolls off the porch and goes down onto the ground. About that time, I get hit in the helmet, and it hurt. That's why I know, like in football, they don't like hands to the head, because it hurt. It knocked my glasses crooked, kind of snapped my head to the side, and I remember standing. I also got hit in the chest, which I didn't know at the time. It hit me in the plate, and I remember standing there thinking, I just got shot in the head, but I'm obviously not dead because I'm still looking around. I should go somewhere else so I don't get shot again. Where should I go? Oh, TJ's on the ground. He's a senior guy. I should probably be over there. And I dove on the ground. And that's really that's what was going in my head. And I thought it was going that slow, because I remember asking a guy later, like, hey, I wasn't like standing there just in there like, no, man, you got hit and you dove on the ground. And then I realized, TJ's not moving. So we grabbed him and dragged him across like 3 yards to safety. And then when they took him to the hospital, they thought he got run over by a car because he was wearing shorts and his legs were all torn up. And they kept going, oh, my God, your legs, what happened? He goes, no, my finger, I got shot. He goes, no, my God, your legs. And he's like, what happened? He goes, oh, that was from my friend saving my life, dragging me across 3 front yards in Ball Springs. So I got hit in the helmet, which was a funny, when we get to militarization, was a military surplus helmet that we got from that 1033 program. Yep, thank God. Got hit in the rifle plate, which is very similar to the plates that they use in the 1033 program. It was a military rifle plate.
What kind of round did you get hit with?
I got hit with a 9mm. It was a High Point serial number scratched off model.
A High Point.
High Point.
Best handgun ever made.
Yep. So
what distance do you think, roughly, just ballpark?
He was probably shooting through from inside the house, 15, 20 yards.
Wow.
Damn.
Because he was, I'd say, deep in the house.
Right.
The way, like, if you walked in the front door, there's a wall to your right, and that wall separated the garage, so he would just lean one side to the other side and shoot at us.
Did you get almost double tapped, or were they back to back, or were they?
I don't know. I know the one. I think the one off the ram, because it hit TJ's finger, hit the ram, and then ricocheted, hit me in the helmet. And I think the other one was just right after, because it was an absolute center punch right between the L and the I of police. And I didn't know. They later on, they're like, hey, man, you looks like you got shot. I'm like, no, I think that's when I dove on the ground. They're like, no, I think you got shot. Pull your plate out. And I'm like, oh, snap. Guess I did.
Damn.
So
You still got that plate?
I do.
That's awesome.
I do. It was funny. So I was saved 2,300, so I got to go to the ICP conference that year and meet all the vest people. So I learned all about body armor and why the warranties are the way they are. And the guy from it was a Point Blank plate, and he goes, he was a NYPD ESU guy, retired.
Oh, that's cool.
And he was a super cool guy. And he's like, hey, he goes, you get into a lot of stuff. That's a 5x7. I'm sending you a 10x12. You need a little bit more protection. So he sent me a 10x12 instead. So it was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
You mentioned May 3rd. For the listener or viewer out there that doesn't know what May 3rd is, let's dive off into that just for a second.
Okay. So May 3rd, 2015, we had ISIS terrorist attack in Garland. So we had been planning for that to happen on a Sunday. It was a Sunday. And the reason I remember it was I went to church that morning. And so before I was leaving, I was doing the holy water, and my wife's like, are you just going to jump in there? I'm like, honey, I got a bad feeling about this. I'm just getting ready. So, and then that was the second time that, hey, I got a bad feeling something's going to happen. And of course, obviously it did. So,
wow.
Back up to May 3rd, there had been 2 previous attacks on freedom of expression. January, I believe, was Copenhagen, Denmark. During a similar event in Copenhagen.
Yeah, so I actually did. So one of the things I got when I did my master's capstone, it was I did in Homeland Security with a concentration in counterterrorism. That was one of the things I looked up, and what I found was it was eerily similar to our deal. It was a panel discussion, same kind of setup. Only difference was it was like in a I guess their version, a coffee shop. So, right. But it was a panel discussion, same format, same everything. Guy shows up, tries to kill the artist, but he doesn't make it through the security. He gets confronted. It runs, I think, in the back alley or something, and they end up shooting. He was going to try to stab the guy, and he ended up getting shot. And then, obviously, Charlie Hebdo was the other one.
So, January the same year, 2015, we have Copenhagen, Denmark. February, I believe, we have Charlie Hebdo.
Yep.
Which, for our listeners, that was the one where you can see the police officer trying to run through the streets in France, and the guys dressed in black, the terrorists, basically run, and when the officer trips over the curb, they stand over him and execute him. So we have one very similar event to the Garland event in January. We have another one in February. May 3rd is the Garland event, and a lot of times we hear the cliche that the greatest indicator of the future is the past, especially the immediate past.
Yep.
You and I talked prior to that May 3rd event. You felt concerned. There was legitimate concerns. There was a legitimate possibility that, based on not just your experience, but you have two prior events clearly to be some indicators, in addition to some other intel that you guys were receiving. But was that just a Dan gut hunch telling your wife that this just feels like it's not going to be a good day? Or was it a combination of your experience telling you all this information?
I think it was a combination. So it was the gut based on just prior incidents. Because, I mean, you look at prior incidents, like you said, you go, okay, every time somebody draws a picture of this Prophet Muhammad, guys show up with guns and try to shoot people. So
not good.
So, I mean, it happened twice already. So, I mean, I think that's what's going to happen here. Right. Then, of course, you get some other intel stuff, and you're like, there's a lot of people talking about this thing. It's just a combination of hunch and just the intel and prior events where this has happened. I remember telling somebody, in the chain of command asked me, well, in the planning, because I mean we were planning for months and months and months. Hey, do we have a chase car? And I think part of it was that I don't think they understood, because we had the deal in January, the Stand with the Prophet event that had occurred, where it was very protester heavy, a lot of protesters. In this deal, there were no protesters. They weren't signing up like they were for that other one. And I think that kind of gave a little sense of, well, this is going to be another protester event. And I'm like, no, I don't. This is going to be a little different. And they asked me, hey, do you have a chase car? And I said, well, chase car for what?
Yeah.
And they said, well, in case they drive by and shoot and leave and take off. And I said, I go, sir, we're not dealing with Johnny Gangbanger here. I go, this is like Johnny Jihad. I said, these guys are going to show up. They are going to get out of their cars with guns, and they're going to kill as many people as they can until we kill them. That's what they're going to do, because that's what they have done in the past. Yep. Every time this event like these have happened, and this is what I think is going to happen. And one of the other assistants asked me, he goes, well, okay, if you were going to do it, what would you do? I said, I would get me and my buddy. We'd have all our guns in the trunk. We'd buy our tickets. We'd show up. I said, I wouldn't show up too early. I wouldn't show up too late, kind of right in the middle. I said, I'd park my car in the parking lot just like everybody else, wait for it to get a little bit crowded, pop the trunk, pull out my guns, and start shooting. And, of course, that's very similar to what they did. Yeah. He's like, how'd you know? I go, it's not that hard to figure out. I mean, right. I told him, you pay me to think of these things, and that's what I would do if I was going to do this. This is how I would do it. And it's like I said, you use your experience, you use past events, and that's even in our briefing. It says, hey, based on prior events, this is what we're planning for. We're planning for guys to show up with guns, personal-borne IEDs and vehicle-borne IEDs, because that's what has been used in the past, and that's probably what's going to happen here. Now, and I say when I do the debrief, could they have hijacked the plane and crashed it into the building? Yeah, sure, but that's probably not going to happen. Yep. What's more likely to happen is just what happened. Hey, we're going to show up with some guns. We're going to get out and try to shoot people till we get killed.
And Dan, we communicated prior to May 3rd, and Dan had expressed concern to the point that he's not an over-the-top guy, he's not a drama queen, but he was like, dude, we need all SWAT out there. We need all of our assets out there. We need our Bearcat parked out front as a deterrent, as a strong kind of in-your-face deterrent. You see that we have assets on the ground here as a possible deterrent. Had those been followed, had Dan's request been followed, can you say the attack wouldn't have happened? I don't know. I've been asked that a lot. I don't know. But if I drove by and knowing the training that they had, some training, they were obviously radicalized, extremely radicalized, not tons of training. Had I drove by and saw, well, they have a helicopter up, they have a damn imposing looking armored vehicle parked right out in front of. Clearly, they have assets here. Maybe maybe it would have changed their tactics, or maybe they would have done their heat runs like they did and left. But I think certainly your concerns prove true.
I think they'd have showed up anyway. I think because that's the whole point. I mean, that's their whole point, right? They're dying for the cause, and I think if they saw that, to them, it probably would have looked maybe even more dramatic for them.
Right.
I don't think anything we would have done was going to stop them from. I don't think they would have gone. Yeah, maybe not today, but we're going to come back. I think they would have done it regardless. They were intent on doing it. They'd already done their research. And that's one of the things. You know, there's a progression of these terrorist attacks and the different stages they go through. And at some point, I mean, again, you go back to technology. I don't have to do a drive-by. I can go on Google Maps and see the whole thing, and I'm quite sure they probably did that because I would have done it. And I think they just said, hey, hey, this is where we're going. It's game on today, and we're going regardless.
Well, and I think if the intel had been shared that they were on the ground in the area at the event, you guys would have certainly had a whole lot different response, more assertive, aggressive response to.
Oh yeah, I mean, we could have definitely we would have adapted the plan.
One thing that's cool about Dan is he's always the quiet guy in the room. He's not the loudmouth, obnoxious guy, but he's always the quiet leader guy. The night of the May 3rd attack, I was getting phone calls from some of our guys because after they engaged the terrorist and killed him, there was some initial beliefs that that may have been a distraction,
Right.
and that there was a secondary attack coming. There was a green belt to the west or south of the location, and so a lot of the shooters had to go into helping on a 360 perimeter. And one of the first calls I got was somebody whispering, and I'm like, I can't tell who this is. I don't know why you're whispering. And it was literally somebody had just been involved in the shooting who's now on the perimeter, back on their rifle again, holding the perimeter. And
At that event.
At that event.
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking of a lot of things. Why is a man whispering at me was one of them. But, if you've just been involved in a high-stress shooting, we need to get you an attorney out there. If you've just been involved in that, maybe you don't need to be on your rifle. I mean, shit's bad because typically in officers involved in a shooting, they're rotated to the rear and they're replaced.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because I that wasn't lost to me.
No, and that wasn't a shot at you.
No, I know.
But things are bad.
Oh yeah, no.
When you can't rotate guys,
right? And I was thinking, well, hey, we can't do that. And I told him, hey, right now we need you here. So, and then kind of my thinking was, well, we shot one guy. I mean, if we shoot another guy, the same deal. I mean, is it really that big a deal? I mean, we already shot one, so we shoot it. It's the same continuous incident. So, yeah. I mean, but we didn't rotate them out till much later.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So the calls started coming in literally that quick. They're holding the perimeter, and they're telling me we just smoked some terrorists. I get there really quick, and the one thing that was there was a whole lot odd to it, but when I pulled up, Dan, who's a lieutenant, 3 or 4 down from the top, is out there leading, making calls. Guys over here, you're over there. We need to do this. We need to cover that. And it's important to our listeners to understand you don't have to be the top dog to be leading. Mm-hmm. And clearly, Dan was leading the entire show out there, and people above Dan were looking to him for guidance and direction. Yeah. And it reminded me of we were soldiers and Sergeant Major Plumley and Colonel Howe, because gunfire's going off and everybody's kind of shell-shocked and I don't know what the hell's going on. And there's Dan out there, do this, do that. Hey, we need to cover this. And our attorneys show up and they're like, who's in charge? I'm like, well, technically there's probably some other people in charge, but the only one that's going to have answers is Dan, so go talk to Dan.
I guess that West Point kicked in.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well,
it was so damn cool to see, though, because you show up at a scene, you want to know who's the highest ranking guy here. None of them were running the show out there.
Well, I got to give kudos, and we talked about it offline. I got to give kudos to he's now our big chief, but he was assistant. That was his first day as the SWAT chief.
Oh wow.
So, of course, there's
Jeff Bryan.
Yeah, there's chaos, and and we're running around, and hey, do this, and we're at a point where the people we had evacuated them to the arena, so everything's kind of safe for a second, and we just happen to come face to face. I mean, just not by not on purpose. We just kind of run into each other, and he looked at me. He's like, I have no idea what to do. I need your help. I'm like, hey, sir, look, we're good. They're safe right now. You let me know. You tell me what you want done. We'll make recommendations. We'll get it done. Don't worry. We are good. And so he made some calls. Hey, we want them out. Hey, we got them out. We did it. And I always give him kudos every time I do this debrief. I have a picture of him in there, and I tell the story because, and I use it as a learning point. He trusted us to do what we needed to do. He knew we knew what we needed to do, and that's because prior to this, we would invite him out to training. He would come out and see what we can do because it's important that he knows.
Yep.
He needs to know, hey, what are your capabilities? What can you do and what can't you do? Because the day of the incident is not the day to go, hey, boss, we're going to put this explosive charge on this door or this car, and we're going to do this. And we've done it before. What? You're going to do what? Can you explain it? Well, sir, I really don't have time to explain it to you. And we didn't have to because he knew, hey, these guys know what they're doing. They're not going to steer me wrong. He trusted us. We trusted him, and we got it done. And a lot of guys in his position would not have done that. Yeah. I've seen guys in his position not do that and then kind of, I'm not saying mess it up, but mess it like, hey, listen, we're good. You just tell me what you want. And I'll give you recommendations. And that was the thing. Hey, we want them moved. All I need to know is where do you want them to go, and we'll get them there.
It's a testament to him as a leader.
Absolutely.
To check his ego, to realize he's 2 or 3 ranks above you, but that's not his wheelhouse. That is clearly your wheelhouse, and I need to turn to the guy two ranks.
Right. No, I give him full credit for that. It was a really cool thing to see, and awesome. It's kind of that it's kind of this little bond thing is kind of weird. It was like I said, we just kind of bumped into each other. But again, testament to him. And part of that, like I said, we made sure that he knew what we were doing. Hey, we'll do what you want. This is how I think we need to do this. You tell me how you want it done. And he facilitated it. Hey, this is what I need buses, sir. You got buses. No problem. And he helped us out, got us everything that we needed. And like I said, other people in his position would not have. I've witnessed people in his position in other agencies and other places.
So have we
not do that because I'm gonna. And he wasn't like that. And it's like you said, it's a testament to his leadership because
That's good.
Well, there was other high-ranking officials that were hiding out from having them either scared or not making decisions that day, and
Jeff was on the ground. No, he was not. He was knee deep in the middle of it. Yep. And that, like I said, for being his first day, and hey, welcome to SWAT, sir. It was really cool to see.
Well, and if you don't know the answers, at least be there and be in the mix and be available.
Yep. Well, and yeah, exactly.
For our listeners that may not know what we're talking about, it just dawned on me. Draw the Profit event, May 3rd, 2015, was at the Curtis Cole Event Center in Garland. It was made out to be an event to blasphemy a religion, but really the spirit, as it was relayed to me, was more about the right to free speech, that people aren't going to be told what they can or cannot say or draw or do. And in the Muslim faith, any depiction of the Prophet Muhammad is sacrilegious. It's forbidden. Any photo or depiction of him, and so the event wasn't so much about drawing him to, I guess, disrespect the religion is how it was relayed to me. It was more about, in America, we don't get told what to do, and you're not allowed to tell us when, how, or why we can do it. So on this event, there was 200 or 300 people.
About two. Yeah, they capped it. 200 tickets is what they were allowed.
So about 200 civilians, probably unarmed.
No, well, they couldn't bring their guns in because it was a school district building, and there was technically a school event going on. They were doing a graduation rehearsal before that. And the reason I know that is because when we evacuated them all, and then they went to go pick up their cars the next day, there was a bunch of guns in their car. I mean, there's they could not be armed inside the building.
Right.
So they were asked to leave their guns in the cars.
But one thing important that you guys prevented was they began their assault basically when the event indexed.
Yes, right at the end.
And the way the Curtis Colwell Event Center is one side is the door that the masses were hurting out of. The terrorists attacked from this side of the building. Had they driven past the front of the building and popped the curb, potentially they would have mowed down because they both had AK-style format weapons.
Yes.
I think one had a full big drum and one had regular magazines.
Yes.
Had they driven another 300 yards and seen the masses exiting out, the potential loss there was been the whole turnout, the end result would have been a whole lot different.
Yeah, if they'd have pulled forward another, I don't know, 10, 15 yards maybe, they'd have been parallel to the middle of the parking area where everybody was. And if they'd have waited just a few more minutes,
Damn.
the parking lot would have been full of people at their cars going to their car, or they would have seen the crowd coming out the doors.
Wow.
And you made a point earlier about, these aren't Johnny Gangbanger that's going to do a drive-by. These guys were there to party. I mean,
oh yeah. I always wonder too,
go
because
bags and
they had a lot of guns and a lot of ammunition, more so than it would appear. This is just Dan's speculation. They had a lot of guns, a lot of bullets, more than you would need for, hey, I'm just going to go in there, kill a bunch of people, and we're going to leave. I always wondered, hey, were they going to go in there, shoot a bunch of people, leave, and then maybe go, because where the Cobalt Center is, there's a bunch of restaurants, there's a hotel. Yeah. Or are they going to try to, hey, we're going to hit this, and then we're going to leave. If we don't get killed, then we're going to go run amok in the hotel or the restaurants. I mean, I don't know. That's speculation, but they brought a lot more guns than, I guess, what they needed for what they were doing. And part of that speculation is, well, they left their stuff in the car. So, I think maybe their plan was, hey, we're going to go run in, do some shooting, run out, get back in the car, go somewhere else and do something. I mean, I don't know. Right. But they left a lot of stuff in the car.
Heavily armed.
Armed.
They were there to party.
Just kind of moving forward. So this happens May 3rd, 2015?
2015.
You've been on SWAT for how long at that point?
Got on in 95, 2005. 20 years.
Wow. Okay. At what point, you had talked off camera just about your involvement with TTPOA, and I'm sure that you probably reflect back on that day and then the day that you were shot as well. At what point did you feel the need to really step into TTPOA in this role that you are now, and how has that evolved over the 20 years that you've been attending all the stuff with TTPOA?
So I started out, I was just doing some firearms instruction. That was my thing. And I was approached by some guys who were with TTPOA, actually from Irving, who were involved in TTPOA. They were region directors and other stuff. And said, hey, you what do you charge to do a class? I'm like, I don't charge anything. I just like teaching. Well, hey, if you want to come, we'll pay you. And I'm like, oh, okay, we don't have to, but okay, yeah. I mean, I guess. I mean, I take time off. Okay. So I started as an instructor, and getting guys training. And, one of the first things I realized is a lot of these guys are paying on their own. Mm-hmm. They're not as fortunate. Some agencies are more fortunate than others. Some guys are bringing their own ammo. I mean, I've done classes for less than the normal rate just so guys could come to class because they needed the training. Wow. We have, when I was doing it, I had class where I brought guys bullets because they were having to buy their own bullets.
Because you knew a guy.
Right, because I knew a guy. and I had to ship bullets. I mean, it's just, these guys are going out of their way to get themselves trained.
Which is fascinating because they're doing themselves a service for their community. And I want to go back, just jump on this real quick. Police officers these days are demonized. They act like all we want to do is just hurt people. And the fact that many of our members and listeners that are listening to this right now are spending their own dime, their own money to expand their training. So in the event that they do need it, it's going to be probably the worst day of their life. They have it.
Right.
And on top of that, we have legislators and community demands you be highly trained, extremely well prepared, but we're not going to give you a damn penny to do it.
Yeah.
But we're going to hold you to a standard that's not reasonable. Right. And we expect perfection. Catch all bad guys smoothly with no force and perfection. But we don't really want to help fund any training to.
Right, and I have a soft spot for those guys. I go out of my way.
And I don't mean all legislators.
No, I know. So
Just a few.
I got involved there, and then I'm like, hey, you know what? We've been a part, and the team has been a part of it. We've gone to competitions, we've gone to the conferences. And hey, this is something I want to get involved in. I think it's important. So I said, hey, I want to do whatever I can. So I was like, hey boy, for a little while, just helping out here at the competition, painting targets, running whatever.
I love that.
Running
Hey, boy.
errands.
I
Yeah.
hadn't heard that in a while.
Hey, boy.
And then a spot came open, and Gary Heath was the president, and he pulled. I never forgot. I remember it like it was yesterday. Pulls me aside at this conference, goes, "Here, you want to be part of the organization?" Yes, sir. He goes, "Well," he goes, "I'm the president. I can appoint people. I'm appointing you. Welcome, kind of welcome aboard, jumping you in." I'm like, "Cool, let's do it."
That's awesome.
So started out as region director. Was region director of Region 7 for a while. Putting on. That's where you're hosting classes. You're bringing in instructors.
And for the listener, where's Region 7?
So Region 7 is probably one of the smallest geographically, but it's got a lot of agencies in there. So it's Dallas almost to Fort Worth, and then Fort Worth is Region 6.
Okay.
So we put on a lot of classes, bring in a lot of instructors. So did that for a while, and then I took Graham Smith's spot. So my career kind of followed Graham. So Graham was the region director. He moved to director of operations. I took his spot as region director. Then he moved to vice president. I became director of operations. He became president. I was vice president. And then when he was done, he resigned or he retired, moved off. So then I became president, and that's where I'm at now. So it's I'm huge. To me, it's very important. I keep in touch at the conference. I get to see all the past presidents. It's very important to me to keep them involved. I always call them the special advisor to the president. I mean, one of our board members now is Shannon Couch. He's a past president. So I have a lot of good advisors. So, before I do something stupid, I'll always call them and go, hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing. They're like, okay, well, maybe you should do this instead. I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe you're right.
And for the listener, because we've had multiple people that have been on the TNPA board. Of course, TNPA's mission, I'm not going to say it's different than TTPOA's, but it's not really in sync with what you guys are trying to accomplish, because we offer the legal plan and so forth. So what exactly, for the listener out there, two things. One, what is TTPOA's mission, not the number one mission? And two, for the listener or viewer out there that wants to be involved and maybe one day be you, what route would you recommend that they take?
So the mission of the TTPOA, I have it. It's on our website, but in a nutshell, it is to provide training. We tried to provide. Our mission is to provide training at lower minimal cost to officers throughout the state of Texas, not in the state of Texas, outside anywhere in the United States. I think membership is like $25. You can join. It gives you a discount on the classes. If you're not a member and you sign up for a class, there's an extra charge, and then you become a member. So it's kind of fixes itself, if you will. And we provide all kinds of training, whatever agencies might need. And the one thing I want to make sure that everybody knows is although it's the Texas Tactical Police Officer Association, the classes are not just for SWAT guys. We have lots of classes that are for patrol guys. We have medic classes. We have all kinds of classes. We have negotiator classes. So don't say, well, I'm not a SWAT guy, so I don't need to join. There's plenty of classes in there that are for patrol officers, and we're really trying to make sure that we get that message out. Like, hey, it's not just SWAT classes. There's classes there that patrol guys and girls can use.
I think that's super important.
Absolutely.
Because you have a young man or a woman that's been on 3 or 4 years and has not had the opportunity to have access to advanced pistol patrol course or a really good rifle course. There's a lot of them out there. I thought for years you had to be an active SWAT member or be able to show credentials that you're an active SWAT member. That's a great freaking opportunity.
Yeah, and we do a great job. We get with our vendors. Our vendors will sponsor classes. So if you follow us on Instagram and
Facebook,
I don't think we're on Facebook, but mostly Instagram is the cool
MySpace.
one now. They'll do deals where, hey, you sign up basically, and they do. It's like a raffle, but it's on Instagram.
Cool.
However they do that, and then they'll sponsor spots for these classes. And depending on where you are, if you're hosting the class, sometimes we're able to give you some comp spots. And like I said, I have a soft spot for guys. There's guys like, hey, I really want to go to the conference, but I can't do, I can't afford whatever. Look, I'll comp your spot. You just get here. I've done that to a few guys. I've comp spots in other classes because the guys need the training. And like I said, they're paying their own way.
Yeah.
I mean,
Golly.
they're paying. I've had guys pay their own tuition, pay their own lodging, pay their own ammo, and average. And I'm like, okay, we got to do something. And end up giving them a free class or giving them something else to kind of make up for it. I mean, but that's, kudos to them. There's this guy, like you said, he's trying to protect his community. He's trying to get more training, and he's willing to pay his own way to do it.
100%.
And if you're going to put in that effort, then we're going to do our best to try to get you.
And those are the guys
training that
making
you need.
what's sad is those are the guys making $12 an hour.
Right.
He's playing footsie this movie. Those are the guys making $12 or $13 an hour. And then they've got to pay whatever the cost,
Right.
the course cost is.
In our class, we're inexpensive. We are inexpensive. I mean, you're getting I think we're doing basic SWAT for like $450. I mean,
Yeah.
we're doing some of these other
Super affordable for the quality.
Some of these other. I mean, we had Ben Stugger come out, world champion. I mean, we have world champion shooters and top name people coming out, and you're paying, $200-300 to. We had one. This is really funny. So last year's conference, 2 years ago, Ben came out, and so your conference fee was like $300. So
Wow.
and that's two classes. Well, this guy signs up, and he's the only one in Ben's class. Well, he's got one-on-one instruction
Damn.
with a world champion for $300. I mean, all day. And Ben shot with that guy all day, and I'm like, where do you get that? I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about it, like, when's the last time you talked to a world champion in anything that you got one-on-one or even, 1-on-3 or 4 instruction? So
100%.
we're bringing in these names, and if you want to get involved, all you got to do is, grab your region director, email them, say, hey, I want to get involved. What do you need me to do?
Yeah.
We always need help at the conference. We always need help at the competition. Get your foot in the door, and then
Be a
start
hey
helping
boy.
out with these classes. Yeah, be the hey boy, and then you'll work your way out. I mean, it's for me, it's very rewarding. I have a very big responsibility, not just to the members, because the members come first, but in my mind, I have a responsibility to the guys who started this thing: Sandy Wall, Paul Ford. I wrote all their names out.
What year was that? When did it kick off?
So we're saying 1984, so our 40-year anniversary is coming up. So, Sandy Wall, Paul Ford, Mike Finley, all those guys. I mean, and all these other past presidents, Gary Heath. I mean, there's so many that, and I'm leaving some out. I'm not leaving you out on purpose. But to me, they created this thing. I mean, out of nothing. I mean, this was a bunch of guys hanging out at a hotel, just swapping stories, and has become this. I mean,
No alcohol involved.
well, there was some, what they said, but here's like a telling kind of thing. At their first time they had a conference was like 1996. They had 80 people. We're at like 500 people.
Oh, yeah.
They had 8 to 9 vendors. Last year we had 8 to 9 vendors in the lobby of the ballroom because we couldn't fit them all in the deal. So
How many vendors do you think? I've never seen a vendor show like y'all.
it was
host.
the biggest.
It's
Last
huge.
year's was the biggest one to date, square footage wise and vendor wise. We had, like I said, we had at least 8 to 9.
That was a Rhine Rock, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
at Kalahari. So,
How many ballpark vendors do you think would you guys shows up?
oh God,
I'd say 150.
yeah, easily. I don't
It's
know.
insane. If you've never been to a TTPOA conference, pay the money just to walk through the freaking vendors.
See,
'cause
but you
it
don't.
is like-
There you go. See, you don't have to pay your money if you're an officer or firefighter. Just show up to the vendor show. You get in free. Just show your
Wait,
ID and you
firemen?
get in free. Well, I mean, we get
Well, because they're med. You got
they're-
med spots
we're
on the
med spots. So.
Just kidding, firemen.
Yeah, sorry.
Just
we
kidding.
love
You guys
guys
go back
too.
to sleep. We didn't mean
But,
anything by that.
But yeah, I mean, I have an incredible. I feel I have an incredible responsibility to these guys because they started this thing, and God, I mean, God,
Yeah.
I don't want to screw it up, and I'll
No,
ask
man.
them. I'll go, hey, if I'm screwing this up, if I'm doing something stupid, of course I use different language, but hey, let me know because I don't want to mess this up. And I've called them all several times, like, hey, I'm about to do this or say this. What do you think? Have you ever run into this? and it's a blessing for me. I mean, I have these guys to rely on that are.
I think it's a testament to you, the past presidents that you mentioned, and the founders. I thought TTPO had been around longer than 40 years. It's a testament to all of you guys that have led it. Because when I travel around the country, when I tell people I'm from Texas, it's not uncommon for them to be like, dude, TTPOA is a legit organization, or they put on high speed. Mm-hmm. So for only 40 years, like we've been around since 1950.
Yeah.
A long time. Well, you expect somebody to build a reputation and a brand from 1950. You guys have been around relatively half that time, and y'all are a highly respected
I appreciate
organization
that.
across the country.
And that's a team effort. These guys, I mean, vendors like Andy Atkins, he's my vendor guy. That guy kills it. He'll always say, well, it's team effort, and it is a team effort, but he crushes it. And I got to sit we did a panel discussion at the NTOA conference, and of course it was me, the guy from Florida, a guy from Colorado, guy from California, and the NTOA guy. And in this, we're having this discussion. One thing was militarization, some other things, and I said, well, and I'm from I'm from TTPOA, Texas, otherwise known as America, and these guys like cheer in the back, and you're wondering, I'm wondering like, oh my God, how did I do? Well, then these guys come up to the deal after, shake my hand, hey, I want to thank you, and I'm like, hey, we're Texas Rangers, we're the SWAT guys are down on the board. I'm like, how did I do? Did I do okay? He goes, oh no, man, you killed it. I'm like, so Texas Rangers say you did good, then.
Absolutely.
I felt like I did well. So,
kudos to you guys, man, because I'm so looking forward to this weekend. I'm going to stop by Friday. I'm going to bring a buddy of mine from Wimberley he used to competition shoot. He's kind of a SWAT advocate. He loves that kind of stuff.
We got a side match.
Oh.
Side match.
I may let him know that. He may have to jump in that. But I'm looking forward to it. Y'all's Instagram, if y'all have not hit the TTPOA Instagram or Facebook page, the y'all stuff is sexy. And I'm trying to kind of figure out how we can.
That's Chris Qual. That isn't me because I'm not.
Shout out to him, who's also a Irving PD and Warrior Awards this past TMPA conference. He was awarded that for an involvement that he had there in Irving. So it's good stuff.
You mentioned militarization of law enforcement. That was a topic we're going to hit. So the woke community, and I feel like it's slowed down a little bit, but militarization of law enforcement was a hot button little sentence used for several years, and I'll let you dive off into it, but the two bottom lines of it is, number one, the assets that are being provided, vests, helmets, armored vehicles, are core necessities that need to be done to do things safely and to save lives. But also, you don't want to give us any money, and if we find an avenue to get things for free from the military, that's a win-win that is working out. But that phrase, in the bottom line, just like May 3rd, 2015, you have two ISIS terrorist extremists, radicalized extremists show up with AK platform weapons, drum magazines. I don't care what you say, that's combat. And if you're going to engage in combat, you need to have weapons for combat. And shooting glitter bombs and hugging it out and reimagining and having a counselor show up, that doesn't stop two terrorists with AK-47s. That's just the bottom line of it. Tell me how the importance of the equipment that you guys need and how you guys, because I feel like we're coming back out the backside of it. People are realizing that the woke agenda didn't work. But tell me about, because you're on the ground.
So I have our chief, Jeff Bryan, has me do a class for our Citizens Police Academy. We call it critical incidents, but and then we tie in the militarization stuff. And what a lot of people don't realize, and we talked about it at the NTOA as well, it was more fiscally driven than it was, hey, we're trying to be like the military. When I got on the team, we had stuff, obviously the helmets that saved my life, so I'm kind of glad we did that. Plates and uniforms, and they were camo uniforms because they were surplus uniforms. And the example I give is, okay, if I come, like for me right now, we have our full, if we're full up, we're 28 guys. I don't know if you've had to try to buy uniforms for 28 guys, but it's pretty expensive. But if I came to you and said, hey, I have these uniforms, you can have as many as you want. You just have to come get them. And it's not going to cost you anything. Are you not going to go do that? Well, heck yeah, you're going to go do that. And that's what they did. So we used it for training so we wouldn't mess up our other uniforms. So, you're saving wear and tear. So it was more same thing with the The helmets. Our helmets now, we have OpsCore helmets now. They're very expensive. They're great helmets. Back in the 90s, we didn't have OpsCore helmets. You had military helmets. So guess what? Hey, I can give you this helmet. It's going to protect you just because actually prior to that, helmets wasn't even a thing. Like guys were wearing, you watch the show, guys were wearing baseball hats backwards and all that. Because when I got shot, I got called and I said, hey, where'd you get that helmet? Where'd you get that plate? But they're free. And we got a gigantic box of them. It's like, hey, you can have whatever on that pallet, but you just got to take it with you. So I think it was more fiscally driven. But the problem you had, and even the armored vehicles. Now, some of the armored vehicles, like MRAP, we could have got an MRAP, but we didn't get one because if you've ever seen one, they're gigantic and they don't really fit on the street. So, But again, if I had a choice between a bank armored car and nothing, I'm going to. Which is why we got the bank armored car.
Right. Yeah.
And now we're fortunate enough. We have 2 Lenco Bearcats, and that's the other thing I bring out is people, they call it a tank. I'm like, okay, first of all, it's not a tank, it's a Bearcat, Lenco from Lenco, because a tank has a cannon and this doesn't have a cannon, and it's a Bearcat. It's not a military vehicle at all. It's actually started out. I think they started as making armored vehicles for banks and other things, and kind of evolved into the Bearcat, which is now probably the preeminent armored vehicle around. And those people are great. They are. Love those people. If you ever get a chance to go out there, because when we picked ours up, we got a tour of the factory. They treated us like kings. It was awesome. The factory's incredible. It's a family-run
Well, they should.
deal.
As much as they cost, they should roll out the red carpet.
You know what? And really, they don't.
Well, yeah,
they don't cost. If you look at it, really, they don't cost that as much as you probably think that they do.
For what they're protecting.
They're protecting, yes. and even then they have refurb. Like our first one was a refurb, and it works great. But it's that's the thing. Well, it's a military. It's not a military vehicle. No. It's a civilian vehicle.
That's right.
And the military doesn't even use Bearcats, and even weapons. Hey. We're buying new rifles. We're fortunate enough. Our chief takes great care of us. We're getting new rifles. Well, if we can't afford those, and I go, hey, I got these rifles for you, but you just got to come get them. Are you not going to go get them? Of course you are. The problem is, the other thing that people don't realize is with that program, it was anything that has an NSN number, national stock number. So you could get desks, you could get chairs, you could get bulldozers, you could get planes, you could get gunships, which if I'd have known I could have got a gunship, I'd have done it just to try to get one. But
I could have seen Mitch's look on Mitch's face.
Jeff wouldn't be surprised. He'd be like, we got a gunship now? Well, yeah, it just kind of showed up. But there was abuses. And then, excuse me, and you're not supposed to sell this stuff. So, but what happens, right? You have people abusing the system, and then like 1 or 2 people do it. So instead of that, it becomes we paint this broad brush now of hey, it's this program, and they're doing all these bad things, and they're trying to be like the military. They're not trying to be like the military. They're trying to protect their guys and afford it because the stuff is expensive. It reminds me when I played hockey in high school. The more money you spent, the more protection you got, right? The more padding there was. It's the same thing, right? I can spend the money, but I don't have the money. But guess what? This is a military surplus thing that's going to provide me just as much protection, but it's not costing me anything. So why would I not take advantage of that?
That's stupid.
Well, and again, to stop somebody actively engaging in combat, you got to have items prepared to stop.
Right, you have to have protection against the threats that you're facing, and we're facing those threats. We're facing rifle threats daily.
Yep.
You have to have. Back in, of course, go at them 12 days, there was no body armor. So guess what? You got shot with a rifle, your chances of, if you got hit in the wrong place, the chances of survival are probably not that good. But you evolved. Now you have soft body armor. Well, soft body armor is not stopping rifle rounds. So now we got plates. Well, the plates, it wasn't a law enforcement thing. That was a military thing. They were wearing the plates. And hey, we can adapt those for our uses, and that's what we're doing. But again, to me, it becomes an issue of there's abuses of the program, and then that's what gets it, puts the microscope on it. And now it's, instead of just taking care of those 2 people that abused it, we're going to paint the broad brush, and now nobody's going to, or you're going to be able to, but you're going to have to jump through so many hoops to do it. You're probably going to, give up and go, never mind.
I hope that the politicians that ended that program need those resources on the day that they need it, and they can be reminded of how important it is when that day comes, if that ever does come.
Yep.
Hold it out there.
So let's take a right turn a minute. I've known you 30 years, and at a distance at times, just because we weren't on the same shift, we've always been friends and always BS'd and communicated and had some fun, crazy calls together. But when I think of Dan, I always think of the calm water. He's not a drama queen. He's a family guy. He knows his values and his priorities. How have you, what has helped you, been shot? May 3rd was a shit show. I mean, that was a freaking huge mess. The first really cool assist, I was ever the first person to arrive at with the bowling alley, was assist you put out. You've been in a lot of events in 30 years. Still a family guy, still the calm water. What has helped you? What is that? Just who Dan is? Has there been tools, your background? What has enabled that?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think some of it is the background and the training. I think the West Point stuff has a lot to do with that. I mean, you just kind of you learn how to kind of deal with the stressors. One thing I'd try to do is try to keep the two things separate. So for me, when I cross a certain road, to me that's like the DMZ. And when I cross that road, it's like, okay, I mean, unless you're getting murdered, I'm just, it's time to go home now and take care of.
I'm now dad. I'm no longer officer.
Right. I'm not officer. Right. I'm not lieutenant. This is what I'm doing right now. And I think that was, part of that is, it's important to. I'm not saying keep them separate, but don't bring that stuff home. And I don't. We don't really. I mean, we may talk about my wife or my son. Hey, little things here. But as far as details, like, oh my God, hey, this guy blew his head off today, and we don't really do that. I've never done that. It's just one of those things. I just think it's just the training and experience.
So you were in Shield and Storm, shot twice, May 3rd. I know there's a shitload of stuff I'm missing.
Run
from
over,
SWAT calls.
hit by a car.
Yeah,
that was off duty. But
when you've hit in a spot, what's helped you get through that, or have all of them you just been like, no?
I think.
Has there been a time where you've had to slow down and evaluate? Man, this one got me pretty good, or
no? I'll tell you that I think the big one was when I got shot. I got shot twice, and I'm like, wow, you're kind of off by yourself, reflecting. Hey, I got shot twice. Could have been dead, and you're kind of talking to God, like, hey, what's obviously has a purpose, right? And then after I got hit by the car, they're like, man, you got like 9 lives, and I'm like, well, I kind of resign myself to the fact that I say, okay, God has a plan. I don't know what it is. He obviously wants me around. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have had the chance to get run over or shot. And I think once you come to terms with, hey, listen, when it's your time, it's your time, and there's nothing you're really going to do about it. It kind of helped me along. Like, hey, some people may not have been as lucky, and there was luck. There's obviously luck involved. I mean, he was involved in probably all those, especially May 3rd, especially getting shot, run over. I mean, his hand's in there, and it's to me, it's like, well, it's not for me to say, it's for him to say. So obviously, he needs me around to do something. I don't know what that something is, but maybe that something is what I'm doing, and he needs me around to do it. No. Maybe he doesn't need a SWAT supervisor up there in heaven yet. So, or hopefully, I get there. But I don't. He's got a plan, and whatever that is, I'm down for it. But
hey, God, I'm down for the cause.
Yeah, I'm down for whatever. I mean, not like you have a choice, right? I mean, so I think that was one of the things, for me was just realizing that, like, hey, obviously he wants me around, so because it could have been, and that kind of made peace because you're wondering, like, gee, shot in the head, shot in the chest, this could have went bad, and it's funny that day, I had come home to change, and I told my wife, I go, hey, honey, I said, I'll be home. I'll be home early tonight. We hit this guy last week. Be in and out. I'll be home in no time at all. Keep dinner warm. And that was at 2 p.m, and I didn't get back till midnight. So I don't ever say that anymore. I'm like, hey, I'll be right back. I don't say that anymore. So
It's equivalent to hold my beer and watch
yeah,
this.
exactly.
I had always respected Dan. I was a pretty young officer working late nights, and I hear assist officer go out. My geography still wasn't super strong on the city of Garland, and he's screaming that he's at the bowling alley and off of Saturn and Northwest Highway. I'm like, damn, that sounds familiar. And I look up, I'm at Saturn and Northwest Highway and pull around in a bowling alley. There's a huge crowd, like heading towards a riot. And Dan's on the ground. When I get out, I'm wading through a crowd of peaceful protesters. And guy's on the ground, and Dan's on him, holding him down on the ground, big guy. And I hear Dan over the crowd. I can hear Dan screaming, gun, gun, gun. Well, in my mind, I'm thinking, my rookie mind, I'm thinking the dude's got a gun. And he's flailing around on the ground as Dan's on him. And I'm like, dude, I don't think I see a gun. So I'm worried about the crowd. Well, then Dan's like, my damn gun. He was leaned back and had a hold of Dan's and was yanking the snot out of it. Well, he's trying to hold what he's got. Watch this 100 people,
Oh, yeah.
80
It
or
got
100
crowded.
people crowded around, and they're all kind of sneaking in, wanting to get in a kick and a punch on us. And we used the minimum force necessary to effect his arrest. And
I had one guy that was helping me. He was the manager, and I could hear the sirens coming. And I said, "Listen," I said, "I appreciate you helping me, but in a few minutes, you need to get off." He goes, "No, I'm like, listen to me. When I tell you, you need to get off and go stand over there because they're going to come running up here, and if they see you over here, they're going to think you're on me, and you're going to get some
trying to
attention."
save your life, sir.
I'm trying to save your life, sir. Yeah. And so about that time, I hear, "Rrr." I'm like, okay, now's the time. I go,
Now's the
get over there. And of course, the cavalry's coming, and they see him kind of getting off, and guys are Clint's beelining to me, but other guys are I'm like, no, don't, he's good. And I told him, like, told you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
That was my first major assist.
Man, you got anything else?
Would we not hit, Dino, Lieutenant Dan?
I think we hit it all.
That's awesome. It's been a good episode. Have you watched any of the Blue Grit before?
I have.
You have. So you know that we typically end each episode with 3 questions, rapid fire questions. And those rapid fire questions, I'll let Clint ask, and I'm sure that being the fact that you're from Garland, that you're going to answer it probably the same way if you want to ask those.
3 questions. Best cop movie or line from a cop movie. Best police car and drink of choice when you're unplugging.
All right, so best cop movie, like movie or like TV show?
Either or line from it, from one.
I'm going to say, we were just talking about this the other day. I would say, well, I have 2. So best show I'm thinking is Adam 12. I just like Adam 12. I think it's cool. I think how it started. Best line's got to be like Clint Eastwood, make my day.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. Best car was probably the Chevy Caprice, the Shamu with the LT1 engine in it. That thing was badass.
94, 95.
Oh yeah,
That's Clint's favorite.
You know, and then the favorite drink, either beer or I like old fashions.
That's a number 1 choice.
Yeah, old fashions are huge. Any certain bourbon you like in old fashioned?
I don't care.
Any old
You're not
fashioned?
picky.
Any certain beer you like?
Miller Lite.
Miller Lite. All right.
So
Old
funny
school.
story about the Shamu. So I was in patrol. I'd come out of narcotics. Was in patrol. Did a robbery at the Waffle House, and they left in a Caprice. You know, and so my description was, hey, it was a blue Chevy Caprice, like Shamu style, and giving out this great description. And then Chris Hadaway pulls up and he goes, hey, me and like one other guy on the shift know what the hell you're talking about. They know what I'm like, what's Shamu? He goes, yeah, they don't know what that is. I'm like, okay, well, anyway, it's around it. And he goes, I know what it is. So
That's awesome.
So we had court cars, pool cars. They were squad cars over the mileage, and so they rotated over to a section for court. So if you came in off duty or whatever, you could grab one of those. We'd gone to Crown Vics, and they were horrible. But you were supposed to take your district squad.
I felt like that was a shot.
It wasn't a shot at you.
It's
I didn't
fine.
mean that.
No,
I didn't
it's
mean
fine.
that personally.
That was
He
a
loves
shot.
Crown Vics. You were supposed to, by God, take your district car. So I would go get my district car keys, whatever, 33, and I would go over and put them on a court ring and take a Caprice court car. And I thought, man, I'm going to get in trouble for it if it ever catches up. And several months into Crown Vics, somebody gets in a chase on 30. It goes around to 635, and I hear two guys saying, "I can't keep up. Is there anybody in a Chevy?" I was like, 33, I'll be en route. Caught him, passed him, got in the chase.
Those cars could move.
Oh, it was awesome.
I never drove one, so I guess I shouldn't really give you too much shit about it.
Oh, I just
All right.
enjoy the banter.
So I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you know where Dino came from?
I don't.
Funny, because it came up because at the last conference, the guest speaker called me Dino, and everybody's like, why do they call you that?
That was the only thing I knew you by for years.
So I got that nickname because I came from New York, obviously. And when I was a rookie on the radio, I got a little excited. And I was like, "Brrr!" And the guy goes, "Hey, man, you sound like Dino from the Flintstones on the radio. You need to calm down a little bit." So that's where it came. Because I know there's probably some people going, I never heard anybody call him that. I'm like, well, that's why.
So in the early 90s, everybody at Garland had a nickname. And we had Dino, we had Hondo, Booger, Pookie.
Oh, yeah.
And if you'd have held a gun to my head most of my career and said, what is Booger's real name, or what is Pookie's real name, or what is Hondo or Dino's real name, I'd have been like, Officer Pookie?
I don't know.
I have no idea. For the first 10 years, everybody went by, a lot of people went by nicknames, and that was just who they,
Yep.
that was who they were. And way into my career, somebody called me, was like, hey, do you know a Maldonado? I was like, man, I don't think so. And I called somebody, like, that's Hondo. I was like, oh, no kidding. I didn't know that was his name.
Well, yes, I do.
Cool.
Well,
TTPOA, they can jump on, if people want to join, they can jump online.
TTPOA.org, you can join. If you want to come out to the competition, you can come out to the competition. The website's updated, so the conference will be here next year at the Kalahari. The website's already updated.
and y'all's presidency ends at conference. Is that Happy?
Yeah, I think it's two. I got to check. I think I got like one more year. It's 2 years because I took over. When I took over, Graham retired. He got off the board in the middle of his, so I took over because I was vice president, and then I got elected. So I think I have one more.
Well, me and Clint will see you there.
Yeah.
It'll be here in Austin. We will see you there.
Please. I mean, we should have registration open for the conference at the end of this week or soon after. We got some really good instructors lined up at a really good, very good price.
Cool.
So,
Cool.
We'll do it.
I like it.
Well, this is about. I think this wraps it up. You got anything else?
Man, nothing.
I'm ready to get my dog Kima.
Kima Ghirardelli. That's her middle name since she's chocolate.
Oh my God! All right. Well, I've got some things to do this afternoon. Looks like I'm getting a new member of the family. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me. This was awesome.
It was awesome, man.
Looking
was
forward
good.
to TTPOA's competition this weekend, and looking forward to our conference. Maybe drink an old fashioned or two.
Yep. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you've contributed to Garland. A bunch of young officers, including me, helping, but across Texas.
Thank you.
People need to
Appreciate
give
that.
back. People need to step up and give back, not just to their community, but to law enforcement.
That's right.
Absolutely. It's important.
Well, this about wraps it up. You guys stay safe. God bless you, and as always, may God bless Texas. We are out.